Hi, welcome back to this episode of Overflow podcast. I'm Bronwyn Deiter and I have Becky and Andrea here again with me. Today we're talking about stress, which is sort of funny because I think both of you have had a bit of stress in your life this week.
Lately.
And it's an important topic. It relates to our hormones as women, it impacts them, it impacts our healing, certainly impacts our mental wellness and our mood. And it really can over time affect our longevity and our healthy aging. So it's something we want to dig into today. Um, Andre, do you want to start us off with just telling a bit about, well, you could tell about the stress in your week and just, how situational stress can come up. But maybe some of your experience around stress and reducing stress in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is funny that we decided to do stress this week because it has been one of the more stressful weeks in my recent, I don't know, like in the last several months anyway. I was just saying to my husband, Andy, earlier in the week, like, gosh, I'm feeling like tightness in my chest, just like that pressure, like that kind of stress, anxiety type feeling, which is where I always feel it if I'm feeling stressed. And it's really just, we all went on a trip that was last week, right? Last
Yeah.
week. We were
Feels
gone for three. I know. I'm like, wow, it feels like a long time ago, but it was last week. And so then we got back, and I think we all felt that, like just trying to get back into the swing of things. There's always like a million things when you come back from a trip and you just feel like you're playing catch up for several days. But then this week we are hosting, I guess you would call it that, a family at our home. Actually, they are staying at our home, and we are leaving. We're trying out this home exchange thing. It's a website. A friend of mine did it and loved it, and so we're trying it out. I'm excited about it. Andy's not as excited about it, but he's willing to give it a go. But the idea is that you can either do like a full switch, like in the movie The Holiday, or you can, like, they are giving us points for using our house, and then we'll be able to take those points and use them somewhere else. Like we're going to Europe this summer, so we'll use them towards a place in London. Anyway, so just the prep for getting ready to have people stay in your home that like aren't your friends or your family, it's like a different level of like, I mean, I feel like we're not really gross people, but I was noticing everything like, baseboards and little things in the kids' rooms. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have a freestanding bathtub. And I looked like behind it, like by the wall. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta clean like down in that little crevice, like all of the things. So it's been, just a week of kids, you got to do this, got to do that. And so that has added a layer of stress. And then we also are hosting a Young Living corporate event here next month, and we have not been able to find a place. And so it has been like crunch times. We had to have it done by today. So we've been like crazily like calling every place we could think of. Finally, last night, found a spot. They just went and checked it out today. And so we're good on that. But it was just those two extra things on top of just the normal, life stuff was just enough to make me feel anxious and stressed, like pretty much all week long. So,
Makes me think
Becky,
like, when people are hosting a wedding, right? Whether it's like parents
oh,
of the bride or just the couple themselves. Like you think about all those extra things. You're like, this is a happy time. This should be a joyful event. And yet you're hosting all these out of town people. You have an event that you are hosting with rental contracts and, caterers and all the things. And those added on to the normal life stuff, like it's just a lot. So there's these like events that happen. We choose them. That's the thing. We
and
choose
I
this
think
stuff.
that's the thing is a lot of times we are choosing our stress, right? Like who chose to do this home exchange? Me. Who decided to be part of like the planning for this event coming? Me. And so like I can own all of those choices. But yeah, Becky, I know you also had a stressful week.
Yeah,
Sure.
yours is a
Me
little
too.
bit not as fun.
Yeah. So we came home from Utah and I got the stomach flu shortly after, which was miserable. So I spent, 8 hours throwing up. It was horrible. I haven't had that in so long. And then it took me, a couple days to recover. Well, as soon as I was recovering, my son, Caden, also got the stomach flu and started throwing up. And, Caden has been the one that has had adrenal stress in the past. Although we did another episode about it and he like hasn't had any, significant issues, but I have like major PTSD from all the time that he had a lot of health issues. And then it just so
Almost
happened
died.
that he,
Let's just clarify, like years ago, he really was hospitalized and almost died on multiple occasions because of his insufficiency. So every time that anything kind of comes up that mirrors that is this like trauma response for you.
yeah, it's major. And it's like something I've tried to work through, but like he literally, he was in the ICU when he was 5 and then when he was 11. And the circumstances always looked the same too. It was like he threw up and then he started looking better and then he got worse again. And so it's like, and he hasn't had any like throw up things either in years. And he's had some illnesses, but he's recovered really fast and it's been pretty impressive. But so the other night, yeah, he threw up. Um, and so one, it elicits this huge trauma response. Like my brain just like totally spirals out of control. My body tightens up. I can't sit still. I get very overwhelmed. I can't focus on anything but like him. And then like, and it was kind of similar. Like he threw up. He didn't throw up as long as I did. He seemed to like, so I was totally like, he's going to bounce back faster than me. But then he went through the next day, kind of slept the whole next day, which I did too after I threw up. But then the next day, he like didn't want to do anything. And so that was the day I was like recovering. So I'm like, oh no, it's happening again. So I'm like going, like my brain's just like losing it. Um, so he, so it was just a long week of all that. He's fine now. He's he's home today still, but he mostly because he didn't want to go to school because he missed all his homework. Like there's nothing wrong. He's eating tons. He's doing great. He's not having any problems, but it took him longer to recover. And so I was just like so beside myself this week. And I've had different issues, over the years, I've had ups and downs with stress, like anxiety and dealing with anxiety and other things too. And I think in those periods when I feel really anxious and really stressed and my body's just like really tight, sometimes it gets hard. Like it gets hard to get back to a grounded place.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell us a little bit more about what are the therapies you've done this week and how have you treated yourself kind of coming out of this crisis? I mean, your body was also going through it. You had the flu. It was like overnight. So it was like you were up all night throwing up.
Yeah. Well,
Your body wasn't really recovered. Then you had the emotional trauma with your son.
that I think that was the hard thing too, is that I was not rested. And then this happened with Caden. And the first night he threw up, I slept on the couch outside his room, and the couch is not comfortable. Besides the fact that I was just worried about him, so I'd wake up every hour. And then, the following night, even since he kind of had slept all day and didn't seem like he felt even really that great, I was still worried about him. And so, yeah, there was a lack of sleep for days, literally. I told my husband a couple of days ago, and we've talked here about how I have trouble eating anyway when I get busy and focused. But then also when I'm stressed, I divert to not eating. And so I told my husband the other day, this was a couple days ago when Kaden wasn't doing so well. And I was like, I just haven't taken care of myself today. Like I wasn't even feeding myself. So it's hard. I mean, I send Bronwyn and Andrea podcasts on our phones, our long conversations in messages, just kind of like they kind of hear my brain spiral out of control. Like I really don't hold back. So I'm grateful for you guys, that you can at least help me process.
We
And
can
so
hold
that,
space.
yeah, I mean, it's like a safe space to process. I'm grateful for friends, like this that can help me process. Honestly, that's kind of been most of what I've done this week to help myself like reground myself. I have tried to like just make myself a little more aware of my thoughts and know that like a lot of that trauma response is going back to old memories, right? That are giving me emotions, that are bringing back these emotions because I'm having thoughts about these old memories. Oh no, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And so it's really hard to stay grounded in the moment. And I realize that like it's like you have to come back to the moment and be like, okay, everything's okay right now.
Mhm.
But it's a constant fight really because we've been through it a lot, and so it's like it takes a lot to retrain those responses.
Yeah, and I think we saw, and you recognized too that you were kind of like imagining the worst. Like at one point, you were really afraid because he was not hungry, and you're like, this could totally be his body shutting down. And then Andrea came back with like, he just threw up a bunch. Like that sounds just like my kid. If he had just thrown up, he wouldn't probably want to eat. Like you would ask him to eat something, he'd be like, no. So it's like, okay, well, it also could be just the normal response, right? So you were like, okay, let's hold that loosely. It could be like, let's not assume that everything's okay and not be aware because if we need to go to the emergency room, okay, but also it could be a positive thing. And like, how do we step that forward like slowly instead of like, going to the extreme. Um, so have you like the last 2 days, have you fed yourself a bit? Totally
Yes,
fed
I'm gonna
yourself.
keep checking in on you on that one.
I have for myself. This morning, I actually just finished up a study with a university down the street, and so I had to go in like fasted this morning, and it was like it was kind of interesting because, and we can talk about what I did later because it's really fascinating. But I had to go in fasted this morning, and they had me, they were getting all this data from me, and so I was there for like 2.5 hours, and I was done, and I was like, I am starving, like.
Yay. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and it was a good thing. But yes, generally, like I have been feeding myself and I have in the past couple of days, and I have been feeding myself well. But yeah, this morning I had to go in and fasted. So I didn't really eat until like closer to lunchtime this morning, which is not typical.
Yeah. You were hungry, so you fed yourself well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrea, what about you? When you are in a busy week like this is stress you chose versus like Becky's stress you didn't
Right.
choose.
Yeah, I
Do
was
you
thinking.
build in buffers with like food and nourishment and things, or do you kind of push it off? I mean, sometimes I just push it off to the next week or something.
Well, I mean, Bronwyn, you and I have talked about how we never miss a meal. So
No.
no, I've still been feeding myself this week. Some of them have been like more on the go meals though, like not sitting down. So, I mean, there's a stressor in that too, right? Like if we're not sitting down and like breathing and chewing our food and eating, like, so it's kind of like a stress begets stress because I was like on the go and oh, let me just grab like a bar and a piece of fruit and some cheese and whatever, and this is going to be like a meal for right now because I just don't have time. So there's that element of it. But in terms of so I was thinking about, yeah, how we experienced two very different kinds of stress this week. Like you did not choose that stress, Becky, but a lot of it is wrapped up in some like PTSD from like a really, really scary time in your life. Like if that had happened to Bronwyn or me and our child had the flu, it would have been like, oh, this sucks. Our child has the flu. Like, right? Like we'll take care of them. It'll be fine, whatever. It's a very different experience for you because of what you've been through. And so we also were talking about, okay, so what kind of emotional trauma release work can you continue to do? Because that was a really big deal, really, really big deal. So it's no surprise that it is really triggering when something like that happens. But anyway, so stress you didn't choose, stress that I, because of decisions I made, I chose. But as I'm feeling that response in my chest and just like I find myself like holding my breath and things like that. Um, I think for me, it's just taking those moments of intentional breathing, like literally just 30 seconds of like, okay, in and slow out. Because when we're breathing out slowly, that is a calming response to our system. Like it's telling our body you can go to rest and digest. When we're doing that hyperventilating type thing or spending more time like breathing in, then we're in that heightened stress
Mhm.
response. So sometimes we have to just tell our body like, okay, yeah, there's a lot going on right now, like, but you are safe. You are okay. Um, and so that, and then I have a verse that I repeat to myself when I'm feeling really stressed and anxious, and it's he keeps me in perfect peace when my mind is on him, keeps me in perfect peace. So I'll kind of get into like if I'm just kind of feeling it, I'll just kind of get into a habit of just speaking that over. And also stepping back and being like, okay, Andrea, what is the worst case scenario here? Your guests that you don't even know are going to get to your house and maybe they might judge something. Like, is it worth all of this like anxiety over your house being perfect when they arrive? No, probably not. So sometimes just that recalibrating and looking at it, stepping back and looking at a situation from a different perspective.
I love that. I think I do some of that, like the worst case scenario, and then realize even if, right, worst case scenario, okay, it won't be that bad actually. The worst thing that could happen, I guess, is they would leave a bad review and you'd never be able to host again.
Yeah, that's the worst case scenario, I think. Yes, it is so funny. Total side note, I posted about this on social media today, and it's so funny how divided people are on this topic of like letting people you don't know stay in your home. Like there are
Oh,
some people that are completely repulsed that I am allowing people into our home that I don't know, and other people are like, "Where's the link? Sign me up for this. Like I want to do this. This sounds fun."
I'm like
So
ready to do it, but when you told me about this, because I've heard of these programs, but then the fact that you're actually doing it now, I'm so excited. And I was talking to Heiko about it, and then I'm looking around our house like, oh my goodness, we're not even close. Like we need to entirely renovate our bathroom. We need to like repaint all of the trim that has been totally dinged up all right the way through the house. I'm pretty sure we have to replace all of our carpet upstairs.
stop.
We're not
No,
close.
it's so funny. Um, what was I going to say? Okay. So I think one of the things that's important for us as women to distinguish is the fact that like stress isn't inherently bad. Like it is a natural body response,
Mhm.
and it's just when it becomes like a chronic thing that it really becomes an issue. I was listening to something recently that was talking about how in those like acute stress situations, our immune system is actually enhanced. Like it's a very good thing for us to have, times that are a finite time of stress. So not all stress is bad.
Well, and like
Yeah.
exercise is one of those things, right? It is a stressor on the body. It's supposed to be a stressor on the muscles and then rebuild afterward. You don't want to over exercise. You don't want to do it hard every day, but pulsing that in and out is good for the body. Um,
Yeah, I think that's what's important to remember though is that those like it's even like the idea of cold therapy. So, for some people, cold therapy can be a little bit too much, but the reason it's too much is they're probably under a chronic stress
Mhm.
situation, right? So, something like cold therapy is like amazing for your immune system, it's amazing for the body. But it's one of those things that are supposed to be an acute stressor, increase the immune system, then your body calms down and then you go on and it's supposed to create resilience. But
mhm.
if you're someone that's under chronic stress all the time and you can't get out of your fight or flight, it's probably not a good idea for you. So
Too much. Same thing
it's
with
kind of the same
vigorous
idea.
exercise, right?
That what?
Same thing with vigorous exercise for somebody who's chronically stressed and adrenals are really overtaxed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I
Gentler.
think that's like, especially in the health space, people need to remember that if they're not responding to a therapy that all the health gurus say are good, they really need to start to look at what's going on in their life and think, is my body under some sort of chronic stress?
Mhm.
And like that's literally the reason that your body's not responding to whatever therapy, probably that everybody says is so great. I think it
And
really.
chronic stress can even look like undernourishment, right? Someone
Mhm.
who's eating 1100 calories a day and really not getting their fats, their proteins, their minerals that they need to. And then they go and try some kind of stressful therapy. Their body may not respond because it's like, I don't have the energy to give what you need of me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, there's stressors we don't always think about. But there's like the emotional stressors of, getting a new job or there's some we can definitely identify. Someone gets a divorce. Well, that's like at least a year of high emotional stress, right? And to give yourself grace and plan in some recovery time on some of these. Um, but even, a relationship that has brokenness, like with a parent or a sibling or for sure a spouse, a child or adult child, those can be chronic stresses that there's a time to put some boundaries, and say like, I need a break from some of this. Um, so, every situation is different, but that book Boundaries, by who's the author of that? I forget.
Henry
But,
Cloud.
important concept. Do you know the author? I don't remember the
Yeah,
author.
his name's Henry Cloud.
Oh yes, Henry Cloud.
Hmm.
Were you the one just telling us of another book that he wrote? Or was that
I don't think it was
hearing
me.
about a second book he wrote that sounded fascinating? Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
Let's talk about how this chronic stress and the chronic adrenal stress plays into women's emotions. How does that impact hormone balance or even hormone availability? Andrea, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so basically cortisol rises, right, when we're stressed. Cortisol is a hijacker. And so instead of our body being able to use like raw materials to make hormones, it's using it, it's going in the direction of cortisol because the body prioritizes things, right? Like we are so beautifully created. And so the body will prioritize what needs to happen right now. But the bummer in that is that we are really in this modern day, so many of us are living in chronic stress, and so cortisol is high, and we don't have enough raw material to make the hormones that we need. And this becomes a real issue like midlife as we're moving like from perimenopause into menopause because a lot of our hormones are made in the adrenals, like during menopause. And so if you have super taxed adrenals, you've been living like high stress for a long time, not those acute, times of stress, but like chronically, um, your body's going to have a really hard time in menopause because your adrenals aren't in a good place to be making the hormones that you need.
Mhm.
So I think it's such a hugely important topic to for women to just be aware of their own stress. And obviously there's so many stressors that we don't really have control over,
Mhm.
but there are some that we do. So it's making conscious choices about how we can alleviate some of that stress, but then also just figuring out what are our ways to cope and to release stress and relieve it. And I think there are a lot of different modalities and things that are
Mhm.
very helpful. In fact, I have an ebook. We need to link that ebook with this episode, um, all about different modalities
Oh, cool.
for doing.
That's great.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
like it's important too to remember that a lot of stress, there's situations that we don't have control over, right? But even those situations, like for example, with me, with Caden, I mean, I can't go back and change the past with what happened with his health. But yet, when he does get sick, I can still, change my thoughts
mhm.
around what it means. And so I think it's really good to remember that stress also starts in the brain.
Yeah.
And so when we're living like, I mean, even how you have that verse that you repeat when you're stressed, like really you're trying to train your brain to like calm down, right?
Mhm.
And so sometimes I think we get so like up and stressed and we're just like, oh my gosh, like we forget that we don't always actually have to feel stressed, even in stressful situations. And I think, yeah, I mean, I want to try some different therapies to kind of like, slow down my brain when those happen because, PTSD is triggered. It's like some of that neuroplasticity too, those memories, those emotions, they're all connected. But so those things can be changed too. And so it's interesting to kind of take a look at our thoughts around our stress or our thoughts around our situation and realize I can choose different thoughts that would give me different emotions that would cause different, you know, chemical reactions in my body, like different feelings in my body that would cause different energy to flow, really.
Mhm.
100%.
That's so true. Like how we approach our stress and what our mental game is on that. And just realizing that we do have control over our thoughts. We don't have control over these circumstances, but the thoughts we do. Andre, I love that you brought up speaking a verse because, um, well, a verse is truth. So it's beyond us and it speaks to our soul as well as to our mind. Um, I think it's good for people. I think it's good to kind of like build yourself a little storehouse of verses that you would memorize, but just ones that you've chosen. A verse that I don't know that it really speaks directly to stress, but it's often one that I use when I feel like overwhelmed, I think, which is a type of stress, is the verse when Jesus says, I will never leave you or forsake you. And just like reminding myself that the Lord is going with me. He's with me and going through everything. So that's oftentimes one that I remind myself of, and it sort of puts a shift on all my thoughts around my circumstance. Um, yeah, I think that's
I
helpful.
also love I also love be still and know, be still and know that I am God. Like perspective, right?
Mhm.
Perspective.
Yeah, I mean, some of it too is just that grounding. Like, I mean, even just going outside and looking at the sky, or laying on the grass and looking at the clouds, or something like a grounding situation where okay, like my body can calm down. I can separate my thoughts, even a space where you can just separate your thoughts from spiraling thoughts, or you can become aware of what's actually going on in there. Some of us, I think, are so disconnected from ourselves. We don't really know how much our thoughts are connected to those physical reactions we have in our body. And
Mhm.
so I even think in times where like I've struggled with some low back pain lately, and I'm like going, okay, like what is connected to that? There's some kind of, stresses, thoughts, like connections to it that
I
are
love
causing energy to kind of stop in your body.
Well, and I loved what you're both saying about feeling your body and being aware of where that is. I've often had stress which shows up like in my shoulder muscles. And so Young Living's essential oil stress away, I found that that's like always such a great place to put that for me because it's like I put it on those muscles and the muscles start to relax. But that's the kind of stress where I'm just like raising up my shoulders all day long. And it's like an evening stress, like, oh, I guess I've been walking around with my shoulders in my ears. And so now it feels that way, right? But then, Andre, you said that chest tightening. Okay, yeah, I can imagine that. I've also felt that. That's a different kind of stress.
Mhm.
Um, or the aches and pains of low back, knees. I've had my knees feel stress. Particularly, this is a little bit somatic, but it's like when one part of my life is not aligned with another part of my life. Sometimes our partner muscles like our knees are like not working in harmony because like my life feels that way and my body is reflecting that.
There's a
So it's
huge
really good
connection.
first step. What was that?
I said there's a huge connection, right, between
Yeah.
our body and our emotions. I had a similar scenario where my hip was locked. And so like if you're sitting cross-legged, usually I can take my knees down to the ground sitting cross-legged. And I had this one where the knee was up like this, like, and it would not move any further down. I was like, what is going on? And after, physical therapy and using the oils and massage and all the things, nothing was shifting it. And my sister-in-law was like, have you thought about the emotional connection with, the hips? And it's about fear of moving forward with a big life decision. And it was when I was when I was quitting teaching to come home to do Young Living full time and had the babies and like the fear of like, oh my gosh, are the finances going to be there and all of that kind of stuff. And I did some emotional freedom technique work around that. And after one session, my leg went back down.
Oh,
One
Isn't that
session. Yeah.
crazy? So
like
So
that's
crazy.
so
crazy.
like we can relax. We don't have that stress
Yeah. You don't have to worry about that.
right in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even
And,
the
and I'm
sparrows. That's another verse. Even the sparrows, right? Like God's
Mhm.
got it. Whatever the scenario is, like in the end, you're going to be okay.
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I'm convinced that most major health issues have an emotional component to them. And as much as I understand nutrition and, I think eating good is so important, it's like there's still that emotional connection that if we are separated from it or misunderstanding it or not processing it, not processing those emotions, like we hold those emotions in us, that's when we come down with chronic health issues too.
Yeah. We all three went through root cause protocol training, and I remember one of the things the founder, Morley Robbins, would say was like, if people aren't responding to root cause protocol, like, to the steps, and their health isn't improving and things like that, oftentimes it's that they need to do some emotional work, like do some EFT, do some emotion code, Splunkna, whatever, whatever fits you, because you can only get so far in physical healing if, the emotions are not coming along too.
Well, and so much of it does relate to our mindsets, right? Like when you start doing emotional work, you recognize, oh, I have a mindset around something like my body is broken, or I cannot get well, or and oftentimes you find that like with EFT, you'll find it because you say something positive, like I'm whole and healthy, and then you have this like this really big emotion. You're like, my body doesn't even agree with that because I don't have that mindset. And so actually replacing our mindset so we can actually believe the truth instead of being stuck in believing a lie that creates that within our body. I think it's fascinating to realize that we are ultimately like we don't want to be liars. So that our if we believe something to be true, we're going to align with it because we don't want to be a liar. And but if we're actually aligned with a lie, we're truth telling with a lie. And
Truth
then
telling
that's
with a
going to cause
lie.
so much negative, so much damage um, in our bodies. Also, the concept that like all of this sounded so woo-woo to me, and like what that doesn't even make sense. Like that, it's what is that chemical? Well, when you start to realize, like, okay, well, an emotion is electrical, there's an electrical impulse flowing through the body. Well, electricity can do some really powerful things. Electricity can move minerals. You can watch it in a petri dish where the electricity moves minerals or oxidizes minerals. That can happen in our body, creating disease because we are emotion creators. So we're creating these emotions and they come out with symptoms or with health in our body. Okay, so beyond this, let's talk about some answers on stress. What are some things we can do practically when we know when we experience stress, whether it's chosen or not? And back to the chosen thing, I choose stress, and I think choosing stress is a great thing. We want to live lives that are meaningful. We don't want to just live totally vanilla lives with no stresses ever,
Right.
as if we could. But I'm all for choosing stress. I'm all for traveling to Europe and hosting the events and doing the things, but we're going to have stress. So, what are some strategies we can use? Let's start with nutritionally. What do you guys think?
Well, and I will say, can I just give a caveat to that? Because I totally agree with you. I'm gonna keep choosing times of stress because it is about like living fully. But I do think there's a difference between choosing some things that are temporary, right? And it's gonna like at this, I'm gonna feel so much better next week because we have our place found, like, so we can just work on starting to promote this event. And this whole weekend thing is gonna be behind us, right? And it's like first one done, check mark. Like it's next time it won't be as stressful. But there is also the personality type that kind of thrives on a chronic stress. And sometimes they don't even know that they're stressed. I have a friend who is definitely always stressed. But if you asked her, she would say, well, I don't really feel stressed. So it's interesting to me that you can get to a point where like you're living in so much stress that you don't even really recognize it as stress. And so I do think there is something to being aware of what you're adding to your plate. Like you got to be aware of what you're adding to your plate because um we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. Like
Well,
and
I
your
think
hormones
that
are
was
cannot what's that?
well, when you mentioned about your breath, even one way that I've had clients, like helps my clients identify if they're stressed or not, is I've asked them to pay attention to if they hold their breath or not.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I've had some clients say, oh, yeah, I'm not really stressed. And I'm like, well, can you just be aware of if you hold your breath during the day, if you hold your shoulders during the day, like how you're holding your body? And some
Yes.
of them will come back and say, oh my gosh, I hold my breath all the time, or oh my gosh, I can feel it in my shoulders. And that was the indication. It's almost a disconnection with your body
Yes.
in some
Yeah.
ways.
The
And so
disconnect.
I just thought that was interesting when you even shared that about the breathing, that you're right. There is a personality that are just disconnected with whether they're stressed or not and think they're totally not stressed. I don't know what's going on. I don't feel stressed. But I think at the end of the day, they're actually just disconnected with their body.
Mhm.
I think also it can be this what you're talking about. Part of that can be that we become numb to our hormones that we have in excess. So just like with the diabetic, where they're becoming numb at the cellular level to receive insulin, like their body just kind of can't hear it because it's like so high. We can with stress have like this huge cortisol rush and adrenaline rush, and it actually feels good. Whereas it should feel like terrifying and then be done and be like, that was terrible. I don't want to do that again. Instead, it can have this like addictive effect of like, oh, I feel good. I'm on a high
Mm-hmm.
because you're not even receiving all of it, but it does feel like somewhat of a stimulant. So I know that for me, back in my worst days of adrenal fatigue years ago, I felt that way. So I would bring in stressful things. I would choose stress. I think because I was like, well, now I feel alive, but then I was like dead for 2 weeks afterward, right? And so having honest conversations with my husband and him saying, I don't think we should add these things in, and me being like, what? It makes me so happy to do that, and then realize like, oh, I'm actually addicted to this feeling, but that's not healthy for me. And I need to step back and heal and be okay with like some boring time for me to heal and then be able to choose something but feel it and not make it as stressful of an event.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
yeah, so I think like a spouse, if your spouse can help you determine that if they're also not on the same train, right? Or maybe a good friend. Although I think as friends, we tend to not be quite as honest and critical of our friends, right? So it has to be a really good friend or someone who you would ask a question like, if I was to de-stress my life, what would be your top three tips? Something like instead of like, do you think I'm stressed? I guess I'd be like, no, you don't, I would never say you feel stressed.
Or like the other day when Andrea was like, Becky, you're doing the emotional work. I'm holding you to
I
it.
was like, all right, you need to make a call today. Like, enough talking about it. Here we go. We're moving forward. You need
As an
some
She's
help.
like,
achievement.
you're
You need some
done.
help, Becky.
Go do something about it right now.
Find a
Get back
friend
to me
who'll
when
call
you
you out. Yeah.
Okay, your original question, I took us on a caveat. Your original question was like about specific
Well,
things, right?
yeah, well, and from
What
RCP
can we do right
perspective,
now?
like their RCP has something called the adrenal cocktail, which is almost like the first thing you start.
Yes.
So, let's talk about that and like why it's helpful when it's not really helpful anymore, like its limitations and its pros and cons.
Why don't you share, Bronwyn?
Okay. Well, the adrenal cocktail has three parts. It's sodium, potassium, and vitamin C. And so it's really supposed to help us make energy cellularly. And really those nutrients are our adrenals crave them. When our adrenals are stressed, our adrenals of course sit on right on top of our kidneys and they help regulate whether we dump or don't sodium from the body. And so when you're stressed, sometimes you start kind of just dumping your minerals, your sodium and your potassium, and then your magnesium, your calcium are going to follow. And so by onboarding some of those, it can help be kind of a buffer. But one thing I've noticed is that like long term, you can't necessarily just take that and keep on living your stressful life because it's kind of just like it's just a support to help you not lose as much, but it's not really the total solution. So, but it's still helpful. And I mean, one thing that's true is people sometimes get to a place where they're just off balance in whether they have enough sodium and potassium each. And in general, we need more. I mean, I just see a lot of people that need more potassium, and they
Mm.
need the sodium to help it stick. What about you guys in your client work?
It's those things are really important for cellular energy, for one. And yeah, when we're stressed, we're going to burn our cellular, like those minerals that are important for cellular energy. So I think the adrenal cocktail, I really like it. You can buy it in a supplement from Jigsaw.
Mhm.
Um, but you can also make it. And so it depends on the person. Some people that I've had respond really well to the supplement, but some people respond better to the foods. So,
Mhm.
you're mixing orange juice and or like coconut water and putting salt in it and getting making sure you're getting your vitamin C and your potassium and your salt. For a lot of people, I have found that it's at least a very grounding, calming, nutritional habit. And so, our adrenals work on kind of a bell curve as our hormones ramp up through the day and kind of come up and come down. So like 10 and 2 are good times of the day to take it. If you can. And I found for me in different seasons, it's been like really calming. I don't love to
Could
take it.
really use one right now. I'm about ready to get up.
I know. I'm kind of thinking the same. I'm like, oh, that sounds so
Oh,
good. I really like to make the food-based ones. Like I have the supplement. I use it sometimes, but I really like to make the food-based ones. So I'm like, oh, do I have that stuff? I could totally use it right now. For real.
Well, and I think
I do find that it is very calming to me. And I think it's also energizing to me, like both and like gives me energy, but like really helps to, it's like it feels nourishing to me, like a warm blanket, soothing. I don't know. I really love adrenal
to
cocktails.
me, to me, it feels like I like not energizing like I have like a ton of energy, but energizing and this is like deep nourishment and like literally I've said so many times like it makes me feel like I can stand up this morning. Like if you've had a bad night or if you're a mom with a baby and you've been up all night long or a child who had the flu and was, sick all night, it's that next morning like, oh, how can I make it through today? And then you take that and you're like, okay, I think I can do it. It doesn't mean you got all your sleep yet, but just like you're I don't know, like I can stand up. I've actually been taking for the last year, I've been doing CrossFit at 7 a.m., like 3 times a week. And I'll take amino acids, like a powder, I'll take creatine, and I'll do an adrenal cocktail all together. So it's like 6:45 that I'm drinking that. And I feel like, so I'm basically an empty stomach when I go to work out, but I'm not totally fasted. And I just feel like it makes me so much stronger when I have that before I go. So if I got a good night's sleep and good nutrition the day before and my adrenal cocktail with aminos in it, I'm like, that's my sweet spot for working out. So I take it a little before the 10 a.m. Um, but if I had a bad night, I probably would take a second one at like 10 a.m.,
Right.
maybe at 2.
So total side note really quickly, because now I'm just curious. How long have you been doing creatine and what have you noticed?
Oh, I've been doing it over a year. Creatine, I started it because I had researched it a bit years ago around muscle building, and I was like, I don't even know if I really want to do that because I'm not sure it makes you strong. I wasn't sure about it. The last year I started because the research around brain health, and like I just want to age well, and I want my brain to be sharp, and I was beginning to notice that I would like forget names or things, and that was irritating. So I started taking it and I did feel like it was helping me be sharper brain wise. I guess
Mhm.
I still forget names occasionally. I couldn't remember the name of that guy that wrote that book, but I don't even know if I ever knew his name. So I don't know.
That one really counts.
I do think it's helped and it's so well studied and it's a pretty like it comes from I mean it's like beef based. And it's a single ingredient. So I've taken it. I don't take like super high amounts. I take about 5 grams. And some people say, oh, you have to get over 10 grams or 15 grams to get the brain effect. I began noticing it right away. So I didn't feel like I needed to push it any higher than that.
Okay.
And
Gonna give it a go again. I
uh,
started it and it made me gassy. And I know
oh,
that I
really?
read that that can happen in the beginning. And I probably needed to start with like 2 grams instead of doing the 5 grams
And
right away.
work your way up.
But my son is like, Mom, you gotta take creatine. Mom, come on, get on the creatine.
Well, and I mean, I didn't want to bulk my muscles. And they say, oh, you can put on a couple pounds of like bulking weight. I did it for months and then I went off it for a few weeks and I didn't like lose any weight on the scale. So I was like, I don't think that's happening for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody
Do
has
you feel
different.
like it makes you stronger though? Do you feel like you can lift heavier or you
Well,
have a spot?
I am stronger now than I was a year ago, but that
That's
has,
right. You're doing pull-ups.
yeah.
That's amazing, Bronwyn. Okay, I know. Okay, back to topic at hand.
Okay.
Maybe we need to do like a CrossFit episode, but okay. Um, what were we talking about? Adrenal cocktails. So another piece of root cause protocol directly related to stress would be magnesium. And so it's one of the things um, when we are under chronic stress that gets really depleted is our magnesium levels. And magnesium, according to Morley, runs like 3,000 plus different mechanisms in the body. And so it's obviously very important. And if we're depleted, things aren't going to run like they need to. And so, and just having enough magnesium can help us to handle stress better. Like we can come at stressful situations stronger when we have, our minerals where they should
Especially
be.
mentally, like mentally stronger.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. And we sleep better, which is probably why we're mentally stronger, right? So magnesium, we can, of course, take it by mouth. And the main thing I'd say is just, well, glycinate's kind of probably one of the best ones, magnesium glycinate. And just don't take high doses of magnesium citrate. It just breaks down different things in the body. But then we have our external sources too, like our baths and our lotions, and we can actually onboard more that way than even through the mouth. So I like doing the mouth, orally because you can just consistent every day, but don't forget the external ones too. So,
Epsom salts is magnesium for those who aren't
oh, yes.
familiar. So,
Thank
um,
you.
magnesium baths can come, you can get like the magnesium flakes, or if you just look for the bag that say Epsom salts, try to avoid the ones that have like fragrances added to them. Just get the straight
Need
Epsom salts. But
we're gonna need
yeah,
another layer of hormone disruption there
yeah.
with the fragrances. Yeah. Okay, any other standout additions to combat stress before we wrap up?
I mean, essential oils. I was going to ask you guys what your favorite like go-to oil. I know you said for like physical stress, like in your shoulders and stuff, Bronwyn, you like stress away. But is there one that really you find to be really helpful when you're feeling a stress response?
I mean, stress away is actually really good for your vagal nerve too, which gets overstimulated when you're stressed. And so even putting stress away like behind your ears is a really good place to put it. I do tend to always go for the Young Living lavender.
Mm.
I mean, we know our Young Living lavender is like nothing like any other lavender out there, kind of. Or there's not a lot of good lavenders out there. So I love Young Living lavender. I also, you know what I've been diffusing actually the past couple of days has been bergamot. I love the
Mm.
Okay.
bergamot.
Yeah. That's
So that's been in my diffuser a ton. I'll use frankincense for stress a lot too.
I was gonna say
'Cause
frankincense.
I'm
frankincense
a
is
huge
just
fan of
very,
that one for stress.
yeah, grounding and calming. And then my other go-tos are always any kind of tree oils. So Northern Lights Black Spruce, I love it. I actually was like going through my stash, my back stash over here the other day, and I was like, why have I not bought any black spruce lately? Like I could use it all over my body because I
Right now.
just
Yeah.
like
You know
it's
what's
so calming and grounding to me.
You know
it's
what
so
I
good in the
love
diffuser? Black
for
spruce plus lime oil. Black spruce and lime. There's such a great
Ooh.
combo in the diffuser.
really?
Hmm.
Okay, I have to try that. I love clary sage when I am
Oh.
feeling stressed. I think it's really good for cortisol and Idaho Grand Fir. So
Hmm.
another tree oil. Like I can just breathe it in so deeply and it just feels like it just calms me from head to toe. So yeah,
Those
And,
frankincense,
two.
clary
well, and
sage,
this
Idaho
is
Grand Fir.
pine is actually one of my go-tos for, I've been part of Young Living since 2013. Um, Pine oil on your big toes before you go to sleep has been one of the best things for sleep. And so I don't know if it's grounding, but I've had customers for years be like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And it's another one of those like gyms where people are like, "I cannot believe that's how good it works."
And
That's
pine.
so same with
Fine.
nutmeg. Nutmeg on the toes before bed. Nutmeg is a really good adrenal support.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's
I
so
haven't
good
heard the
too.
pine. Interesting.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I
Try
know that one
pine
was,
or
yeah.
like, yeah, if you guys have a Facebook group, put it in there. I'm telling you, people will come back and they'll be like, oh my gosh, why didn't you ever tell me this? And I'm like, I
Okay, I'm gonna
tell
try.
people all the
We
time.
should try a
But,
pine challenge. Like everybody sleep with pine on your toes for a month, and we'll see what happens.
uh-huh. It's
Interesting. Okay.
for years, it's like come back and people are always amazed at how good they feel.
I was going to mention frankincense, went to your question, but Valor has frankincense in it, and Valor, like I just always love Valor. Like somehow it really does it for me. It also has the black spruce in it, but some other pretty amazing ones too, the blue tansy and helichrysum. It's a pretty great oil. Um, but also Becky, I just like you had mentioned our lavender, the Young Living lavender is different.
Mhm.
And why it's different. I mean, there are like I live in a rural community and there are lavender farms around here and I don't want to assume that they're doing a bad job adding chemicals, extenders, like what happens out there in the big commerce. These are little family farms, but it's actually difficult to find the true Lavandula angustifolia. So I know these lavender farms around here, they're beautiful, but what they're growing is actually lavandin. It's the grosso lav. It's called grosso lavender, but it's actually a variety of lavandin, and it doesn't have. It has like half or less of the chemical constituents of lavender. So the fact that Young Living has brought that to the United States and has
From France.
cultivated
Yes.
to such a degree, from France, yeah, it truly is different from the seed up. And that's not to say people are doing a bad job. It's just that they've gone to the work to find that and make sure it's really giving us what we need for therapeutic use. So I do love that one too, and
Mhm.
it's in stress away,
Mhm.
and in some of these blends. So yes, yeah. I think the tree oils are grounding, right? Like tree oils with deep roots. It's like an image in my mind. Like that's what you can always know is going to be a grounding oil.
Mhm.
Okay, last thoughts. I think we need to move forward in kind of recognizing our stress, supporting ourselves, sometimes choosing less, but realizing life is can be have stresses, and that's what
We can
makes
reframe.
yeah, we can reframe
Yep.
and it
We can
keeps
do
it
things to
colorful, right?
support through the stress. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see you all next time. Thanks for being with us on this episode of Overflow.